I'm a university student who lived on campus. I was studying for my finals at the time and felt hungry, so I decided to order through Uber Eats like I had done a few times before. I had great experiences with the app, so I wasn't concerned, even though this happened very late at night. My residence at the time was located in a slightly weird place on campus. A few drivers missed the location the first time, but that rarely happened. I wasn't surprised when this particular driver missed my location and called me for directions. However, I noticed on the Uber Eats map that he wasn't following my directions at all. He drove around campus twice while on the phone with me. He then parked in one of the few more remote parking lots. He complained that my location was too hard to find and that he was going to be late for his next delivery. He refused to drive any further. At this point, I was getting a little annoyed. I told him I would walk to his car to pick up my food. This was a 15-minute walk, so he was nowhere near me. However, I wasn't feeling alarmed yet. When I got to his car, he apologized for being late and said that he would give me a ride back. I said that it was cool, and I'd walk back myself. He again insisted on giving me a ride. I refused and said that I just wanted my food. I told him that he should rush to his next delivery since he was already very late at this point, and I'll give him a good rating for trying to find me. He became visibly agitated and angry. However, I saw that his window was slightly open, so I reached my hand in really quickly, got my food, and then ran like hell. Luckily, there was no drivable road where I was going, so I wasn't worried about him following. When I got back, I noticed the usual sticker from my favorite restaurant was not intact. It had been ripped from the paper bag and folded over on the side. I left a low rating and didn't touch the food. For context, my friend and I who are a part of this story are both girls. My friend and I were going up to Massachusetts to visit a college campus together. We planned on staying at an Airbnb that was close to the college. Unfortunately, the Airbnb was about an hour and 40 minutes away from the airport. The only way we could get from one place to another was to take an Uber. I ordered the Uber, and it arrived in about 15 minutes. As the Uber pulled up, the Uber driver, let's call him Max, rolled down his window and stared at my friend and I for about 15 seconds. The first thing I thought was how he looked like a bigger version of the guy from Split. Feeling uncomfortable, I asked who he was there to pick up, and he said my name. My friend and I hopped into the back seat of the car, but once we closed the doors, the first thing Max did was look at us in the rearview mirror and said,
"This is gonna be a real nice ride with two pretty girls in my car."
The way Max said this sent chills down my spine. My friend and I probably showed our discomfort because he quickly tried to tell us that he didn't mean it in any way. However, since he had already given us bad vibes, I wanted to get rid of the awkward silence. As we drove, we went through the back roads of rural Massachusetts. It was dark, no streetlights whatsoever. I asked why it was so dark. Max chuckled and told us,
"Yeah, it's so dark I could drive into that ditch right there and no one would ever know."
Alarm bells started ringing in my head, but we had only 20 minutes left. Max had begun to say how much he would miss us and stuff. We kept quiet. Meanwhile, I was looking at Google Maps on my phone just to make sure he didn't try anything. And of course, he decides to make a right turn instead of a left. I told him he was going the wrong way, and he told us he wasn't. I assured him it was the wrong way, and he got angry. He began telling us about how he had met his wife because his friend cheated on her, and he found her in a bar or something. Then he told us his wife makes him so mad that he wants to strangle her. My heart sank when I heard this, but we were 5 minutes away. When we arrived at the Airbnb, Max started to take off his seatbelt and told us that he would help us with our luggage in the back. Neither of us put anything there. We only had book bags. My friend and I quickly walked away, and Max turned off his engine and told us,
"I'll keep in touch."
We went to the Airbnb and reported him, and I deleted my Uber account. This incident happened about 6 months ago, and I recently took an Uber for the first time since this incident, so I thought I'd share. I was leaving a work function at a bar around midnight, in a large city about an hour away from the suburban home I share with my partner. For reference, I'm a woman in my mid-20s with an average build, and I was a bit buzzed that night. I'm talking like 3 drinks, so not incapacitated in the slightest. Anyway, I'd normally take a company car home, but I hadn't reserved one since I didn't know what time I'd be leaving, so I just decided to Uber. The company reimburses me for the bill anyway, so it was no difference to me. Once the Uber pulls up, I say goodbye to my colleagues and get in the back seat. I'm always very nice to my Uber drivers, so I introduce myself. This driver, let's call him Ed since I don't actually know his real name, seemed totally normal. No red flags, and we make pleasant conversation for about 15 minutes, until we're squarely out of the city and on the way to the suburbs. From this pleasant conversation, I learn that he lives in a certain neighborhood not far from my home. Note that this neighborhood, while relatively nearby, would be completely out of the way on the route we're taking to my home. The conversation reaches its natural end, so I just stay a bit quiet and start looking at my phone. The quiet is interrupted by his voice, suggesting I take a nap if I feel tired. It didn't strike me weird at first, so I just thanked him for the offer, but I wasn't that tired. He then said,
"Oh, I always get sleepy when I'm drunk. Are you sure?"
At this point, something in my body made me even more wide awake than before. I replied that I wasn't drunk and said that I only had a few drinks, so no need to nap. I'll be home soon enough anyway. He drops it after that, but I still thought it was weird he'd say that. About 5 minutes later, he says that the highway has some weird construction going on and that the single traffic lane ahead would make my trip longer than it needs to be. He asks if it's okay to take a longer route. I oblige, already on edge and just wanting to be home. My partner calls at that moment, asking when I'll be home, and I make sure to make it very clear that I was talking to my significant other. Something was weird about this guy, and I wanted him to know that someone is expecting me at a specific time and knows where I am. After I hang up the phone, the Uber driver stays quiet and we get off the highway. On a different exit I've never used, but I guess that's to be expected on a different route home. I'm bullshitting on my phone because I don't want to talk to this guy anymore. Not even looking up until he says,
"My house is only 5 minutes from here."
Okay. Pit in my stomach. I'm probably a good 25 minutes away from my house right now, a distance enlarged by his shortcut. I say some nonsense about how I like the neighborhood and how my boyfriend and I were thinking of moving here instead. Blah, blah, basically anything I can think of to make it seem like I don't think this is weird in any way. Surprisingly, he doesn't say anything in response, and now starts driving on a road in a direction I knew led to my house. Crisis averted, right? Except not really. 15 minutes go by and my surroundings are a bit more familiar. Just as I'm starting to feel more at ease, he starts asking questions about my boyfriend.
"What does he do? How long have you guys been together?"
And other seemingly normal questions. Finally, with about 10 minutes to go, he asks if my boyfriend makes me happy. He does very much, and I gush a bit and say, yes, he makes me very happy. Then he asks if I make him happy. I thought that was a bit weird, but humor is my defense mechanism, so I say, well, I should hope so. 8 minutes away, he turns onto a side street and pulls over to the side of the road, looks back at me over his headset and asks if I'd like to make him happy too. What? He asks again.
"Do you want to make me happy tonight?"
I took a second to think through my options. I'm alone with this guy who's behind the wheel. The street is dark and I don't see any lights on in nearby houses, and I don't know what the hell this guy has in his car. I defaulted to the responses many women know to be the true barrier to men's advances. I don't think my boyfriend would like that very much. His weird grin falls away from his face.
"He doesn't have to find out. Come on, make me happy. I know a few ways you can start."
I tell him my boyfriend is expecting me home any minute, and besides, I love him, I don't want to hurt him. Could you please just take me home? I carry a small knife and a canister of mace. but all I could think of was to appeal to this guy's sensitive side. Somehow it worked, and he didn't say another word after that. Just turned back around and silently drove me home. Weirdly enough, I say thanks as I get out of the car. Old habits die hard, I guess. And that was that. I go into my house and start crying immediately for some reason as soon as I hug my partner. He tells me I need to contact Uber immediately and tell them what happened so this guy doesn't try taking advantage of anyone else. I agree and pull up the app to file a complaint. Except when I looked at my last ride, the picture in the profile was 100% not the same guy who drove me home. The car was the same, but not the driver. The guy in the photo was brown and wore a turban, maybe early 40s. The guy who drove me home was white and seemed just a bit older than me. Uber never followed up with me and just refunded my money. I did tell the police what happened because my partner insisted, but they didn't take me very seriously since nothing actually happened. I was worried for a while since this guy knew where I lived, but apparently it's long forgotten since I just took an Uber today. Moral of the story: always make sure the photo in your Uber driver's profile matches the person who's driving the car. Hey everyone, it's Box. I just wanted to say something before we end. I've been putting these stories out for a couple weeks now, and I just want to know what y'all think. I figure I still want to put up videos, but I thought maybe I should try something new, something more vocal over visual. If you've been enjoying these stories, then I thank you. If you have ideas on how to improve these videos, then please let me know. And also, if you have anything scary of your own, send them on over and I'll put them in a video. Alright, that's all. I'll see y'all next week.